Developing right now on Morning News Now, President Trump on foreign soil, kicking off a historic 4-day trip to the Middle East. The visit already marked by controversy over the offer of a lavish gift, a luxury jet from Qatar now set to become the new Air Force One. All this as the Trump administration celebrates progress in trade talks with China.
We achieved a reset with China after productive talks in Geneva.
We do want trade. We want more balanced trade, and I think that both sides are committed to achieving that.
Now, Wall Street bracing for a wild day after yesterday's big rally. We have team coverage. Plus, a happy homecoming for Idan Alexander, the last living Israeli-American hostage, finally released after nearly 600 days in Hamas captivity. Meanwhile, the humanitarian crisis in Gaza growing as resources run out. We'll bring you the latest. Developing this morning, fire danger in parts of the U.S. as temperatures rise to near record highs. We're tracking the conditions before you head out the door. And it's a different kind of workflow, and it could be the key to happiness at the office. Why researchers say immersing yourself in your work could actually be a good thing. We'll explain exactly what we mean about that flow. Good morning. I'm Savannah Sellers. Joe's off today. Thanks for joining us this Tuesday. We're going to begin this morning in Saudi Arabia, where President Trump landed just a few hours ago for the first foreign trip of his second term. Mr. Trump received a royal welcome upon his arrival to the capital city, Riyadh. He was greeted by Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman as he got off Air Force One. Now, this is just the first leg of the president's trip to the Middle East. He'll head to Qatar and the United Arab Emirates later this week. But there is controversy growing over this offer of a luxury jet from Qatar that could become the next Air Force One. Also, this trip comes just one day after the U.S. and China agreed to a 90-day pause on the triple-digit reciprocal tariffs they imposed on each other last month, marking a big step toward easing the trade war between the two countries. We've got our friend of the show, Caleb Silver, standing by with analysis on that huge trade breakthrough. But we're going to begin in Saudi Arabia with NBC News senior White House correspondent Kelly O'Donnell. She is traveling with the president. Kelly, good morning. Thanks for being with us. So walk us through what's on President Trump's agenda for this stop in Saudi Arabia.
Well, good morning. Good to be with you. And for the president, this is an opportunity to expand the American brand and perhaps the Trump brand as well here in Saudi Arabia with important business meetings. There are partners in business from the kingdom as well as the United States who will be meeting here. The president will be talking about economic development, and he has already been treated to some of the pomp and ceremony that is a custom here in the kingdom when an important leader visits, and President Trump certainly seemed to revel in that as well. Some of his top advisors also had a chance to meet the Crown Prince, who's effectively the leader here in the kingdom at this point. And the president will certainly be trying to get investment in the United States. But the conversations will also go beyond that to talk about important regional issues like Iran and certainly some of the global hotspots where the U.S. has come to rely on some of the support that the Saudi kingdom can provide, especially in the Middle East where there are high tension. So for President Trump, this is a chance to be on the world stage in a way that he has not during his years out of office. And certainly this is notable because Saudi Arabia was the first stop in his first term. And now this is a multi-day trip and shows the emphasis President Trump places on this part of the world and the relationships he's building here.
Kelly, let's also talk about the offer of this luxury jet. We have, unsurprisingly, Democrats criticizing this move, but also even some of his allies here criticizing the administration's plans to accept this plane and saying it needs congressional approval. Tell us the latest on this.
Well, it's an extraordinary offer from the Qatari government to provide the president to the Department of Defense a plane that can be fitted as Air Force One and then eventually, before he leaves office, be transferred to the coming Trump presidential library. It's an extraordinary gesture and one that has raised a lot of questions about the ethical concerns here because foreign governments are not to give gifts of this magnitude to the United States without congressional approval. President Trump says this was essentially an offer too good to resist. The current Air Force One, a Boeing-made product, is 40 years old. There is another one in the pipeline, but it has not been delivered yet, and he's concerned about an aging aircraft. Here's how the president responded to questions about a potential conflict here.
I would never be one to turn down that kind of an offer. I mean, I could be a stupid person and say, no, we don't want a free, very expensive airplane. But I thought it was a great gesture.
And certainly for President Trump, this is something that he is eager to accept. His aides are talking about it in positive terms, but critics say this is too great a value, that it is effectively a bribe, that it crosses all the ethical boundaries. And so this will be an ongoing pressure point. Of course, it's currently fitted as a luxury liner, kind of an apartment in the air. It would need lots of changes for security and so forth, but it is the kind of plane that President Trump envisions he would be using as Air Force One.
Kelly, also, it's been a little over 24 hours since the U.S. and China announced this temporary pause on most of these tariffs on each other. Global markets soared, but it is only a 90-day pause. Has the administration outlined any plans to pursue a more comprehensive agreement? Do we have any idea how talks and negotiations are going?
Well, certainly the pressure has been relieved to a degree, but only to a degree, with the talks that happened in Switzerland, reducing the tariffs from 145% down to 30%, still higher than when President Trump came into office. So that still presents issues for supply chain and those kinds of imports that American businesses rely on. They are talking about talking and trying to come to some greater resolution. But this has really been just sort of a pause moment and taking off some of the heat, but there's a lot of work still to do to try to resolve what have been intractable problems between the United States and China on trade. President Trump, in his tariff war, has certainly set his sights on China, so a little bit of the heat is reduced now, but there's a lot of work for Secretary Besson and others to continue going forward. Savannah?
All right, Kelly O'Donnell traveling with the president. Thank you very much. Well, let's get more analysis on the economy and markets with our friend, Investopedia's editor-in-chief, Caleb Silver. Caleb, good morning. Great to have you with us. Big news yesterday. Clearly, investors breathing a sigh of relief. We saw what happened with the market yesterday. How's it shaping up today? And tell us where that rally ended.
Yeah, it rallied, ended with the S&P 500 up over 3.5%, one of its best days in the last few years. And the NASDAQ, where a lot of those chip stocks, semiconductor stocks, and electronic stocks, that was up over 4%. So a really big day for the stock market, a good relief rally there. We're pretty much back to where we started the beginning of the year. And the agreement, while it's not cemented yet and there's still a lot of details, it does provide some clarity. You at least have a baseline number of 30% that businesses can operate with. But there's other tariffs that have either been in place or are going to go into place with China that still need to be resolved. So still some resolution there. But the fact that there's an actual number is actually really good for companies who are really trying to plan for the future.
And for businesses and just consumers as individuals alike, does the 90 days go far enough? Does it really give you a break on thinking, oh, good, I can still, buy things for a little bit longer without that exorbitant fee? Or is it just simply not enough clarity?
It's not enough clarity, but people have been buying in anticipation of tariffs. We saw a big run-up in auto sales in the past couple of months, big run-up in electronic sales. People may be doing some of that impulse or trying to buy ahead of tariffs or ahead of any decisions in tariffs. But there's a big exemption that was left out of the agreement that actually went through this morning. That was the de minimis exemption for packages of $800 or less. You have to pay a pretty big tax on that, about 10% or $100. That now is lifted, so that's good for small businesses and people ordering from China, and then China agreeing to lift restrictions on buying Boeing parts. A lot of this is about the U.S. trying to get China to buy more from the United States and taxing China on its imports to the United States as well.
What does need to ultimately get done, get hammered out to put the world economy back on track?
Well, this is a big agreement. This is one of our biggest trading partners, $580 billion of trade between the U.S. and China. We still have to deal with Canada and Mexico, but this would set sort of the framework for what other deals could look like in the Asia-Pacific region. We know that's a big priority for the Treasury Secretary, South Korea, obviously, Japan, big trading partners with the U.S. So if they get this and they get the agreement from these countries to make more purchases from U.S. companies, I think that's going to be one of the big sticking points in these deals. Will they actually make the purchases? There was a deal like this back in 2020 in Trump's first term. They didn't come through with all the purchases that they guaranteed, which is why Trump was so aggressive in his second term with these tariffs.
Caleb, but also just in terms of the broader economy, Goldman Sachs cut its U.S. recession risk to 35% from up at the 45% it was at. in the wake of this news. How big of a deal is that, and what does that mean about the chances of a recession now?
Yeah, the heat has come down off of that recession talk for now, at least. There was predictions as high as 40%, 50%. We heard CEOs like Jamie Dimon warning of an impending recession. I think that's cooling a little bit. That doesn't mean we won't have what we call stagflation, which is a slowing economy, which we've seen in the first quarter. Rising prices, those are coming with tariffs. 30% on China is not a little deal there, and also potentially rising unemployment. But right now, that unemployment rate of 4.2%, hard to have a recession when you have full employment in this country.
All right, Caleb, thank you so much. A lot to cover this morning. Well, as the president was traveling to the Middle East, an American-Israeli soldier held hostage in Gaza by Hamas since the October 7th terror attack was freed. Idan Alexander is now reunited with his family after a deal negotiated by the Trump administration. NBC News correspondent Hala Garani has this emotional reunion.
After 584 days in Hamas captivity, the emotional homecoming. Idan Alexander's mom hugging him, telling him she loves him. Idan, the last known living American hostage, embracing his family. While back in Tenafly, New Jersey, his hometown, cheering at a watch party for the release of the dual U.S.-Israeli citizen.
Until now that he was released on the screen, I didn't believe it would be true.
The deal between the Trump administration and Hamas that led to his freedom largely bypassed Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Hamas is still holding at least 20 living hostages. The father of one of them says only one man can get his son out.
Only hope is in President Trump. We have no trust in our government.
The president saying other hostages could be next.
We hope that we're going to have other hostages released too.
Lester has been speaking with the families of American hostages for months, here with Idan's sister last September.
My best friend, that I was growing up with, has just been gone from my life. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
It's been very difficult.
She was here as he finally came home. With Hamas still holding hostages and the humanitarian situation in Gaza getting worse, the focus now turns to a potential ceasefire. President Trump is traveling to Qatar, which has close relations with Hamas, with many hoping it might lead to a breakthrough in talks.
Hala, thank you so much. Well, for more on this, let's bring in Hagar Shamali. She's the host of the Oh My World video series on YouTube, also a former spokesperson for the U.S. mission to the UN. Hagar, great to see you. Good morning. So what does it tell you that President Trump sidestepped Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu here and ultimately did secure Idan Alexander's release?
You know, Savannah, it's actually a pattern of behavior at this point where Trump has sidestepped Netanyahu on several occasions. He did when they negotiated with Hamas directly for the release of Idan Alexander and the other American hostages who are not living a couple months ago. And then when he pursued the Iran negotiations. And then most recently, when he cut a deal with the Houthis, a ceasefire, agreeing not to attack them anymore in exchange for the Houthis not attacking U.S. vessels only in the Red Sea, right? That's another deal that he cut around Netanyahu. And now you have this one. And so what he's saying here is that any deal making he pursues is going to be in the benefit, first and foremost, for the United States and American citizens.
Hagar, Hamas says they released Alexander in hopes of restarting a ceasefire and the flow of humanitarian aid. How likely is that to happen? Do we think that this could lead to a breakthrough, especially since, of course, they're asking those things of Israel, who was not directly involved in this negotiation to release Alexander?
Sure. Well, so on one hand, you have the fact that you haven't had a hostage released in a long time. And the fact that we've seen Idan Alexander now being released renews hope that the other ones could be released. And it comes in the context of two important deadlines. One is one from the Trump administration to reach some movement on ceasefire negotiations as Trump is going to the Middle East. And then the other is a deadline set by the Israeli cabinet as well for a ceasefire deal by the end of Trump's trip. Otherwise, you'll have Israel expanding its war in Gaza further. Only on May 1st, Netanyahu, in a speech, said that he was prioritizing the defeat of Hamas over the release of hostages. And so only a couple weeks ago, a lot of people had lost hope. And this now, it opens the door a little bit, even if it's only a crack open. And on humanitarian aid, Israel has just agreed to allow humanitarian aid in with private companies only, which undermines the UN. The UN was not happy about that. But again, these small moves at least open the door for potential movement on this otherwise situation that had been an impasse.
When you look at the agenda of President Trump's trip to the Middle East, do you see any kind of plan to advance U.S. interests in the region, aside from anything economic?
That's right. Most of the focus is on business deals, as you know, as you've discussed. But there are two geopolitical things that Trump is going to be focusing on. And that's number one, the revitalization of a Saudi-Israel normalization deal. Let's remember that that is a path to what President Trump would like as a path to a potential Nobel Peace Prize. And that's his main focus. He wants to expand the number of countries under the Abraham Accord, starting with Saudi Arabia, or really led by Saudi Arabia in particular. So there's that. And there's also the fact that Trump's Iran negotiations are largely rooted in a purpose to prevent a nuclear arms race in the Middle East. So he's going to be talking about that and certainly seeking quiet support for that, at least.
All right. Hagar Shamali, as always, thank you very much for joining us. Well, House Republicans are gearing up for a big day on Capitol Hill. Their proposed legislation that would make major cuts and changes to Medicaid, of course, the government-run health care program for tens of millions of low-income and disabled Americans, is set for debate in committee later today. The legislation includes work requirements, stricter eligibility checks, citizenship verification, and new limits on federal funding for Medicaid to states. The plan has drawn harsh criticism from Democrats. Well, it needs the support of nearly every House Republican in order to advance in the Senate. NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Melanie Zanona joins us now from Capitol Hill with more on this. Hey, Melanie, good morning. Good to see you. So this legislation, it's a key part of House Republicans' agenda. Tell us a little about how it's proposing to change Medicaid. What does it mean in terms of like people potentially losing their coverage altogether? And I mentioned, you know, that Democrats have been critical of this. Just tell us what we're hearing from both sides.
Yeah, good morning, Savannah. Medicaid is under some major overhaul changes underneath this proposal, which could result in millions of Americans losing their coverage. And this is according to some nonpartisan scorekeepers. I want to walk you through some of those changes because they're pretty significant here. The first major requirement is that they are going to institute work requirements for able-bodied adults. That would require 80 hours a month for people in order to qualify to be on Medicaid. That is something that Republicans have tried for many years. Some Republican states have tried it and failed. So that would be a pretty big deal if they're able to pass this. The second thing they're trying to do is increasing the frequency of eligibility checks. Currently, those eligibility checks are done every year, but Republicans want to speed that up to every 6 months. And finally, they will reduce funding underneath this proposal for non-citizen states that give Medicaid to anyone on the rolls who are not citizens of the United States. Now, there are some proposals that were being considered that were much steeper in cuts. Those did not make the final bill. That would include capping the federal limit on how much the government is willing to spend on Medicaid per individual, as well as reducing the federal match rate for some of these states that expanded Medicaid under the Affordable Care Act. So really what they were attempting to do here with this bill was strike a delicate balance between the moderate Republicans who didn't want to see any changes to Medicaid and the conservative hardliners who wanted to essentially gut the entire program. But even with these modest changes, Democrats are saying this is going to result in millions of people losing their coverage, and they're going to go after some of these vulnerable Republicans who are up for re-election next year.
Also, Mel, on the agenda today, the House GOP's tax bill. It proposes increasing what's called the SALT deduction limit. That stands for state and local taxes. This is the amount that people can claim on their federal taxes. Putting that at $30,000 for people making less than $400,000. Walk us through this. What should the American consumer know? And tell us about the biggest challenges that it faces.
This is still one of the biggest unresolved issues in this entire tax and spending cut package, and it really has the potential to unravel the entire bill if it does not get worked out. Several House Republicans have already come out and said they will not vote for this bill if that SALT figure, that $30,000 cap before the SALT deduction remains. And so leadership has signaled that they are going to try to change this before the final vote next week. It is going to committee today. That's just considered some placeholder language. And some of these Republicans have campaigned on this issue, especially in these high-tax blue states like New York and California, where there's a lot of vulnerable members up for re-election next year. And so they are really digging in here. But the question is just how high Republicans are willing to go. Because, again, it's this delicate balance, right? You have these hardline conservatives who don't want to add to the deficit. So there's not a huge appetite, especially in Republicans in red states, to actually increase that number so much. But it's going to have to come up in order for this entire package to pass next week.
All right, Melanie Zanona, thank you so much. We're now just a little over a week out from Memorial Day. Can you believe it? The kickoff to summer and what could be a record-breaking travel season. Now, after a variety of issues we've been telling you about at Newark Airport that have created ripple effects across air travel, the U.S. Department of Transportation is now laying out an aggressive plan to address the air traffic control outages in hopes of a smoother summer. NBC News senior correspondent Tom Costello has the latest.
Now up and running 2 high-speed redundant telecom lines, sending radar and radio data from New York to controllers in Philadelphia who handle Newark airspace. When the main line still glitched early Sunday morning, the new backup lines held.
The equipment that we use is so old, the information has to be slowed down. It comes in too fast.
Sunday's glitch lasted only 30 seconds, but DOT Secretary Duffy says controllers feared the system was crashing and ordered a 45-minute ground stop with delays and cancellations quickly climbing.
And Newark, just so you know, we're all rooting for you for better equipment and more staff.
Blaming the Biden administration for failing to upgrade the system, Duffy says a Tiger team is now fast-tracking new fiber optic lines to controllers at Newark, JFK, and LaGuardia, but it will take weeks to test.
Families shouldn't have to wait 4 or 5 hours for a flight that never takes off.
Amid the equipment failures, too few controllers, and a runway under construction, United has cut nearly 36 flights at Newark and is urging other airlines to also make cuts. Meanwhile, the Trump administration urging Congress to spend tens of billions of dollars up front to replace the entire ATC system nationwide.
My concern is that we could see other situations like this around the country because the system is old. It's old.
On Wednesday, the airlines are meeting about reducing the number of flights at Newark, with the airport already maxed out. Back to you.
All right, Tom, thank you very much. Well, in the first news conference of his papacy, Pope Leo XIV emphasized the importance of protecting the media and free speech. He addressed journalists from around the world yesterday, even making time to chat one-on-one with some of them after the event. Just like we showed you yesterday, that included our Lester Holt. Here's more on what he had to say.
It was an unexpected moment at a speech to invited international media members, Pope Leo concluding his remarks and then walking to the front rows, where we had a brief off-mic chat. I asked him about the significance of an American pope. You tell me, he said, before sharing an anecdote about an individual returning to the church because there was now an American pope.
Good morning, and thank you for this wonderful reception. They say when they clap at the beginning, it doesn't matter much. If you're still awake at the end and you still want to applaud, thank you very much.
The Pope speaking of the need to safeguard what he called the gift of free speech and of the press, remarks that drew a warm response from the invited journalists.
The Pope delivering a really stirring defense of the free press, and he talked about those who have been locked up, incarcerated because of their reporting.
Benedicat vos.
Pope Leo has quickly embraced the role of moral authority,
Dell'amato popolo ucraino,
calling for a lasting peace in Ukraine, an end to violence, and a release of hostages in Gaza. His brother John watching the Pope's first Sunday blessing as pontiff with us from a nearby rooftop. He says his brother is determined.
It does seem like he was made for this moment. He knows what he's going to do. He knows what he's going to say.
Others who know him say expect Pope Leo to hold his ground when he finds it necessary.
Will he be afraid or bound by the risk of failure or criticism?
My experience of now Pope Leo is that he's not afraid to make decisions that may be unpopular. Decisions where, when he really believes that this is the right decision to make, it's very easy for him to make that decision.
4 days into his papacy, Pope Leo seemed at ease, even signing the baseball of one attendee.
What did he say? He said White Sox or Cubs, and I said White Sox.
Playfully donning a well-wisher's colorful sash and blessing babies. But there was a lot of business ahead. In our brief moment together, I asked him whether he has plans to return to the U.S. anytime soon. His answer, not yet.
What a neat interaction there. Thanks to Lester for that. Well, evacuations are underway in parts of northern Minnesota because of several wildfires burning in the area. On Monday, Governor Tim Walz called in the Minnesota National Guard to help fight these growing fires. More than 40 structures have been destroyed by them, which are continuing to grow in size, like the Camp House fire, which has been burning near Lake Superior since Sunday and nearly doubled in size yesterday after jumping across a highway. And today's weather conditions are not favorable for firefighters. Meteorologists are calling for warm, dry weather and those wind gusts up to 25 miles per hour. We've got more on the record heat and this fire risk facing the northern plains in your morning News Now weather. Angie Lastman is here with us with your forecast. Hey, Angie, good morning.
Hi, Savannah. Good morning to you. You got that right. We've got record heat from top to bottom of the middle of the country. Those are just a couple of the spots that we're going to focus on. But let's start with Texas, where temperatures today expected to hit 103 degrees in Austin. That would break that record for this date of 98 degrees. Similar story in Houston, not quite as expansive between today's temperatures that we're expecting in the record, but still likely to break a record there. Del Rio and more of where that came from as we get into tomorrow, too. 99 for Dallas, 105 for Austin. Fort Smith potentially tying a record, even out towards Monroe. Maybe not record-breaking temperatures, but we sure are close, and we sure are running well above normal for this time of year. When it's all said and done through the week, I think we'll see dozens of potential records challenged. You can see many of them focused across the southern plains, but Kansas City, Rockford, Indianapolis, all included in that as well, where we could see some of those record-breaking highs. Big picture look for the temperatures today. Yes, hot and, of course, summer-like across Texas, but even up into Minneapolis, we're running nearly 20 degrees above normal. So a high of 88 degrees is what you'll get for our friends there. 70s for Detroit, mid-80s for Kansas City. Even tomorrow, 93 degrees in Wichita. Jackson will head to the low 90s. 73 degrees for Green Bay. And look what happens by the time we get into late week. It's the pool weather that settles in across the east. Raleigh into the 90s, Philadelphia into the 80s for your Friday and Saturday, 90s for Friday in Atlanta. So warm temperatures to come. And of course, we mentioned those fire alerts that are up. 7 million people across parts of the Southwest and the northern plains. We're going to see those last through at least the day today. You can see the couple of spots that we're going to watch for that critical risk and elevated risk. Those same locations that are under the fire alerts, elevated winds. We'll see the dry conditions and, of course, those warm temperatures not helping. And just a quick check on the Mid-Atlantic, where we're waking up to wet weather. It's an umbrella kind of day for a lot of folks from the Carolinas, stretching up into the Northeast and back towards the Great Lakes. We've got plenty of flood alerts up at this hour, and those will stay with us through the day today and potentially into tomorrow. We could still see some trouble spots with this system kind of bringing some good soaking rain across this region that will interrupt those outdoor plans for sure over the next 2 days, Savannah.
Oh, really something. So much rain in parts of the country and then this fire risk.
Yep. We've got it all.
Thanks, Angie. We'll see you in an hour. Well, there's much more to come here on Morning News Now. Later this hour, weighing the results, researchers pinpointing a clear winner in the first ever head-to-head trial of the top weight loss drugs. We will break down the findings. But first, though, after the break, troubling testimony in the federal sex trafficking trial of hip-hop mogul Sean Diddy Combs. We'll be right back. We're back now with a look at the explosive first day in the sex trafficking trial of music mogul Sean Diddy Combs. In opening statement and testimony, the prosecution painted an explicit picture of drug and sex-fueled parties that were part of a criminal enterprise. The defense says what went on behind closed doors were not federal crimes. NBC News entertainment correspondent Chloe Malas was in the courtroom and has the latest and a warning that some of the images and details are disturbing.
Music mogul and business icon Sean Diddy Combs in front of a judge and jury facing 5 criminal counts in a bombshell sex crimes and racketeering trial expected to last for 2 months.
He's engaged. He's ready to go. He's ready to put on his defense.
In opening statements, prosecutors laid out a 20-year pattern of alleged abuse, accusing Combs of running a criminal enterprise, including sex trafficking and kidnapping. Prosecutors say that he forced his alleged victims to take part in drug-fueled sex parties called freak-offs. At the center of their case, star witness Cassie Ventura, Combs' former girlfriend, who first accused him of abuse in an explosive 2023 civil suit, which was quickly settled without Combs admitting wrongdoing. A version of this 2016 security video obtained by CNN showing Combs brutally beating Ventura in a hotel hallway played for jurors. The prosecution's first witness, a former hotel guard who was on shift and responded after the assault. He says Ventura appeared scared, had a, quote, purple eye, and said she wanted to leave. Defense attorneys acknowledged Diddy's bad temper in their opening statement, saying, quote, sometimes he is so angry and jealous that he gets out of control. But they said domestic violence is not sex trafficking and love of baby oil is not a federal crime. They described the alleged victims as, quote, capable, strong adult women and said that they're after money.
Who has the bigger hill to climb here?
Certainly the defense has the bigger hill to climb. We are going to be seeing videos, not just of beatings of a victim, but of these sexual acts.
Jurors heard explicit testimony from a male escort called by prosecutors who says on multiple occasions Ventura paid him to have sex with her in front of Combs and says he witnessed Combs assault Ventura. Combs has pleaded not guilty to all of the charges. A 12-person jury made up of 8 men and 4 women will soon decide the fate of one of the most powerful men in music.
Our thanks to Chloe Melas for that report. Well, the trial will resume this morning with Cassie Ventura expected to take the stand. And in another high-profile trial taking place this morning, reality star Kim Kardashian is moments away from taking the stand in a Paris courtroom to testify against the group accused of robbing her at gunpoint back in 2016. Kardashian was staying in a luxury apartment when the group allegedly gained access to the building, tied her up, and then stole $9 million worth of jewelry, including the engagement ring from her then-husband, Ye, the rapper formerly known as Kanye West. Kardashian has called the robbery the most terrifying moment of her life. NBC News international correspondent Raf Sanchez joins us from Paris with the latest here. Raf, good morning. So Kim expected to take the stand there. I understand it as we speak. What kinds of details are we expected to hear today?
Savannah, good morning. Yeah, Kim Kardashian just arrived at the court here in Paris. She was accompanied by her mom, Kris Jenner, and we were expecting her basically to go straight onto the witness stand in that courtroom and begin reliving this terrifying moment. Now, as you said, she has talked about it in press interviews in the past, but today is about going through it in forensic detail. She's going to talk about how she was here in Paris in October 2016 for Fashion Week. She was staying in this luxury hotel frequented by celebrities because of its anonymity. And she'll talk about that moment in the early hours of the morning when these armed robbers allegedly burst in disguised as police officers. She says they held her at gunpoint. They tied her up. They demanded to know where her jewelry was, specifically asking for that $4 million engagement ring from Kanye West. And from a legal perspective, one of the key questions about her testimony is 9 years on, are her memories vivid enough that she is going to be able to help to convince the jury that those men in ski masks in her hotel room are the same men sitting in the courtroom today? She is going to be cross-examined by the defense, and that is going to be one of the areas where they may try to poke holes in her testimony.
And Raf, so these 10 defendants that you're talking about, they're part of what's called the Grandpa Robbers gang. And there is one of them, the most well-known one, Younis Abbas. He's the man who had previously confessed to his role in the heist, detailing what happened. Get this, a book that's titled I Kidnapped Kim Kardashian. He's already testified. I want to read a little bit of it. He said, I regret it, not because I got caught, but because there was a trauma. Have we heard anything else like that from the other defendants? And as you pointed out, if it's kind of up to Kim to say those 10 are the same 10, does the fact that one of them has already said all that help her?
Yeah, so it's interesting. Here in France, you don't plead guilty, not guilty, the way you do in the United States. But as you say, some of these 10 defendants are already acknowledging that they played at least a role in this heist, in this kidnapping. Now, Abbas, obviously the most high profile, literally confessing in a book. He is not one of the men accused of actually going inside of the apartment, not accused of waving the gun. And he says he was not aware that a gun was going to be used. We spoke to his defense lawyer yesterday. He said that this is a man who is regretful about the role he played. And Sven, as you say, this is almost like something out of a movie. One of the other defendants is known in the French press as Old Omar. He is accused of being the mastermind of this. That is something he strongly denies. He can't really testify because he is now deaf and mute. But he has been sending various witnesses written notes apologizing for his role, and we expect that he will try to offer some kind of apology to Kim Kardashian later on today.
Wow, some unbelievable details there. Raf, and part of that, when you talk about the deteriorating health of some of them, it's because it's been nearly 9 years since the robbery. Why is this trial only happening now?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Part of the reason is COVID led to a big backlog in the courts, as it did in the U.S. The other reason is, you'll remember back in 2015, large-scale terrorist attack here in Paris carried out by ISIS, and that was followed by one of the biggest trials in French history, and that just tied up the courts for years and years and years. And so it is only now, as you say, nearly a decade on, that Kim Kardashian is finally taking the stand. And we will, at some point next week, potentially get a verdict here. Savannah.
All right, Raf Sanchez, we know you keep an eye on it for us. Thank you so much. Well, we have more international news now. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says he is ready to meet Russian President Vladimir Putin face-to-face this week for peace talks. NBC's Matt Bodner joins us with that and other world headlines. Hi, Matt, good morning.
Savannah, good morning. Zelensky has reiterated that he's prepared to meet with his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin in Istanbul on Thursday. The Russian leader is yet to confirm that he will attend. This comes as President Trump continues to push for both sides to sit down and make a deal, even going so far as to suggest he may also travel to Istanbul to meet with both leaders. Meanwhile, Ukraine and its Western allies continue to call for an unconditional 30-day ceasefire, threatening Russia with increased sanctions if it doesn't move in this direction. Ukraine and Europe insist that a ceasefire must precede further negotiations to end the war. Moving along now to the Philippines, former President Rodrigo Duterte, currently in detention in The Hague, has won a mayoral election after a landslide vote in his hometown. Duterte was arrested in Manila Airport on an ICC warrant earlier this year. The charges were crimes against humanity for murders that took place as part of his brutal approach to the war on drugs. Despite the controversy, he remains hugely popular in parts of the Philippines, particularly in his hometown. His supporters say that he was kidnapped by the International Criminal Court. And we'll wrap up this hour in London's West End. Cynthia Erivo, star of the film adaptation of Wicked, will stage a one-woman rendition of Bram Stoker's Dracula. She'll play the main character Dracula as well as 22 other roles when it debuts next year. The show will run from February 4th to May 31st, 2026.
That is very cool and something I'd be interested in seeing. Matt Bodner, thank you very much. Well, coming up, a welcome side effect of weight loss drugs. The new study that shows the medication could have benefits for your mental health as well. Plus, former First Lady Michelle Obama opening up about her own mental health journey as she enters what she calls a new chapter in her life. Your weekly check-in is next on Morning News Now. We're back with a first-of-its-kind study that's revealing new details about the effectiveness of weight loss drugs. The study that was published in the New England Journal of Medicine on Sunday found that Eli Lilly's drug Zepbound helped patients lose more weight than Wegovy. This was the first study to directly compare the medications. NBC News medical contributor Dr. Kavita Patel joins us with more on this. Dr. Patel, good morning. So walk us through the details of this study and what we learned here. What exactly it shows that Zepbound did.
Yeah, Savannah, this is the first trial that really looked at these popular weight loss drugs against each other, Zepbound, also known as Mounjaro, and Wegovy, also known as Ozempic. And they followed adults over 72 weeks and found that the patients that took pretty much the max doses of Zepbound, which is about 15 milligrams, lost on average 50 pounds compared to those that took Wegovy, also, again, almost most of them on the max doses, which lost about 33 pounds. So that translates to about 20% body fat loss on Zepbound and about a 13% body fat loss on Wegovy. And then in terms of circumference, this is something that I think the researchers wanted to look at because abdominal circumference, or your waist, and kind of how much you lose off of your waist, can be an indicator of cardiovascular risk. there was also a greater weight loss or circumference loss with Zepbound compared to Wegovy. So those results are consistent, but also probably indicating some sort of cardiovascular protection. To be clear, both drugs lost a significant amount of weight, just Zepbound edging out Wegovy a little bit more.
So what is the biggest difference between these medications? Like, do they work differently? Is there something that patients should know?
They do. We talk about GLP-1s kind of with all classes, which is true. So Zepbound, also known as tirzepatide, actually has a dual-acting hormone. It has that GLP-1 glucagon-like peptide hormone that also acts to kind of decrease just the food going down your stomach. Okay. It decreases and makes you feel a little more full when you might not have eaten as much. But it also has this second hormone, a GIP hormone. And I think this is really the key, Savannah. It helps to kind of, some people say it quiets that food noise in the brain, but we also know it changes the way that your body stores fat. So I think that in general, GLP-1s is a class of drugs, which include both Ozempic and Zepbound or Mounjaro. You can see the names that we've posted there. All of these drugs have that GLP-1. Zepbound just has that extra one.
These kinds of drugs have had a major impact on the weight loss industry in general. We've talked so much about them, especially with you. Even just last week, we see something like Weight Watchers filing for bankruptcy. As popularity continues to surge, what do people need to do or think about or ask doctors before taking these medications?
Yeah, I want to highlight that both drugs had side effects. So it wasn't a non-trivial amount of people that actually had to stop either because of side effects or the side effects were concerning, anywhere from the 3 to 5% range. I would also just say, obviously, you need to consult a doctor. I'd also add in there, consult a nutritionist. You need to make sure you're eating enough protein, that you're getting enough calories. And that can sometimes be hard when I just told you that the food slows down and that you don't feel as full. And then in general, I think just remember, there is no kind of one magic solution. This does need to be done kind of in conjunction with other lifestyle factors, getting good sleep. This is something that the trial results also showed, that people really needed to think about balanced nutrition and all the other things that add up to proper weight loss.
Yeah, important to remember that as well. Dr. Kavita Patel, great to have you. Thank you. Thanks. Well, now it's time for your weekly mental health check-in, and we've got a study that shows these weight loss medications may also offer mental health benefits. We're also talking about how comments from former First Lady Michelle Obama about therapy and entering a new phase of life could help others. Joining us now to break it all down is integrative physiologist and CEO of the Embody Lab, Dr. Scott Lyons. He's also the author of the book Addicted to Drama, Healing Dependency on Crisis and Chaos in Yourself and Others. Dr. Lyons, great to have you on set with us.
Great to be here. Thank you so much.
Great to meet you. Let's start on the mental health benefits of these weight loss drugs. What did we learn?
I love the studies on GLP-1 and depression because it helps us understand the link between body and mind. So GLP-1 inhibitors reduce inflammation. And over the last 20 years, we've been able to identify that depression, the root cause of depression is actually inflammation. That's right. Depression is an inflammatory disease. And so things like GLP-1 inhibitors are helping reduce that inflammation, which breaks the cycle with depression.
Wow, pretty amazing. I mean, it just feels like every week there's something new that we're finding out about these drugs.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about this Michelle Obama one. So she recently opened up on a podcast. She talked about going to therapy.
Yeah.
And she also talked about sort of adjusting to a new phase of life because they're empty nesters now. Yeah. It's so funny. I was just talking with my parents over the weekend about their experience becoming empty nesters, and my parents were not well during the transition. They were crying. My mom didn't want to get out of bed. Like a very difficult time when you feel like your family unit is changing. I guess two questions here. First is just the power of someone, you know, as high profile as Michelle Obama opening up about that and what it can do for other people. But then also, what should parents in that transition period keep in mind?
Yeah. I mean, first of all, the fact that Michelle Obama is talking about therapy is amazing. I love this because 15, 20 years ago, therapy was considered taboo. And so that we've come so far with an acceptance that therapy is really going to help not just navigate the past, but help us support the future. And in terms of empty nest syndrome, I remember my parents crying too, so I totally... And one of the things to recognize is it's normal to have a difficult, challenging time transitioning. So really recognize, take your time to pull your focus back to yourself as a parent, to really go, what do I want? What are my hobbies? What are my needs? and really take an honor that it might take a little bit of time to recognize those things.
Absolutely. My dad always jokes, he's like, it felt like I just dropped you off at a gas station and drove away. And I'm like, what am I doing without this member of my family?
Yeah, it's hard.
Time.
Yeah.
Okay, also there's growing buzz around something that's called flow.
Yeah.
I know that's a very common word, but what we're talking about here is sort of like this state where you're totally immersed in a task, time kind of disappears, you're flowing through it. It's a new piece is suggesting that it could be the key to long-term happiness at work if you can kind of find that flow state in the work that you do. Is it possible to like tap into that? Maybe if you're not loving your job, is it something that we can all sort of strive for?
Good question. So flow's been around for a lot longer than the 70s when these studies of flow came out. For example, like it's in different philosophies and religion. It's under Christianity, it's called Christ consciousness. In Taoism, it's called the way. So it's been here for a long time. We have a lot of tools. But more recently, the research is how do we apply it to everyday people? And one of the most important things is put your phone aside. Distraction kills flow. And having clear goals and internal motivation for what you're doing all help you kind of get what's considered in the pocket, in the flow, and where it's effortless. And yeah, when you hate your job, it makes it a lot harder. So you have to focus on what aspects of your job do bring you a sense of confidence, do bring you a sense of enjoyment, where there's enough challenge and there's enough interest in you simultaneously. Else you're going to get bored or anxious.
All right, there you go. Dr. Scott Lyons, great to have you. Nice to meet you. Thanks for coming on set.
Thanks for having me.
Good to see you. Coming up, a package deal. Amazon teaming up with FedEx to get your packages delivered. More on the new partnership and what it means for you. Morning News Now. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Let's get you some money news now. President Trump is pushing through even more tariff cuts for China. CNBC's Silvana Henao joins us with this big news and some other financial headlines for us. Hey, Silvana, good morning.
Savannah, good morning to you. Yes, so the White House issuing an executive order from President Trump last night, cutting that so-called de minimis tariff on packages shipped from China. So the rate will be reduced from 120 to 54%, although a flat fee of $100 per package will remain in place. Now, the de minimis exemption, which was ended by the president in February, allowed items valued up to $800 to be shipped duty-free. Amazon says it struck a new partnership with FedEx earlier this year to handle some package deliveries. Now, the move comes after UPS said in January it plans to reduce shipment volumes for Amazon, its largest customer, by more than 50% by the middle of next year. Now, that's part of the company's plan to focus on fewer but more profitable deliveries. And AMC is rolling out half-price tickets on Wednesdays as it tries to attract more customers between weekends. The discount will start on July 9th and is based on the normal price for an adult evening ticket. Premiums for large screen formats will still apply, and the move comes after AMC reported a drop in revenue from admissions this past quarter. Savannah, the last time I went to the movies was to see Encanto. I mean, I think that says a lot.
Been a minute for you, girl.
Been a while.
Yeah. I love going to the movies. I haven't been in a while, though, either. All right, Savannah, thank you so much.
You got it.
All right, some exciting news now for basketball fans and also us here at NBC. Six-time NBA champion Michael Jordan is set to join NBC Sports coverage as a special contributor this fall. That announcement was made during NBC Universal's upfront presentation in New York City yesterday. Our parent company at NBC Universal also announced an 11-year deal to broadcast both NBA and WNBA regular season and playoff games starting next season. Peacock will also live stream exclusive national Monday night games. In a video message, Jordan said the NBA on NBC was a meaningful part of his career, and he's so excited that it's back. And in other basketball news, the Dallas Mavericks have secured the #1 pick after winning this year's NBA draft lottery. It's a good bit of luck for the organization that left their fan base confused by trading away their star player, Luka Doncic, to the Lakers midseason. That now gives them a chance to sign Duke's young sensation Cooper Flagg first overall at next month's draft. Well, coming up from the streets of Peru to the Holy See, when we come back, a look at Pope Leo's humble beginnings in a country very close to his heart. This is Morning News Now. Welcome back. Finally, this hour, we're taking a closer look at the impact Pope Leo had before he even became Pope. He spent many of his early years in Peru doing missionary work to help communities there through an economic crisis. NBC News senior national correspondent Stephanie Gosk retraced Pope Leo's roots.
Chulucanas, Peru is roughly 16 hours from the capital Lima, in the foothills of the Andes. It's where Pope Leo XIV began his work in South America in 1985. About as far away from Chicago as one can get.
Robert Prevost came to this region of northern Peru when he was 29 years old. It was going through an economic crisis, there was internal strife, and he was here to try to help.
El culmen del terrorismo.
Father Fidel is an Augustine missionary himself.
Entonces, los terroristas.
He tells me communist guerrillas threatened the Augustines in the 80s, but they defiantly stayed. We went in search of Father Prevost's church.
We thought this was the one, but then as we were standing here shooting it, a taxi driver said, "That's not his church. Let me take you to his church." Hola, señor.
Winding through the streets of Chulucanas, he knew exactly where it was. Local sculptor Cesar Juarez greeted us. Like so many here, he has a Pope Leo story. During a recent visit, Juarez gave then Cardinal Prevost a replica of one of his statues.
Usted puede creer.
Can you believe he is the Pope? I asked him. No, he said, I couldn't. We are so proud. So is the Ruiz family. Sandra and her younger brother were baptized by Padre Roberto.
Lo recuerdo porque...
She remembers the day. He was so charismatic, she said, and really connected with children.
Somos bendecidas.
Her mother feels blessed. Pope Leo, they said, left his mark not just here, but all over Peru. Stephanie Gosk, NBC News, Chulucanas, Peru.
Such a neat look there. Thank you, Stephanie Gosk, for that. Well, that's going to do it for this hour of Morning News Now. Stay with us, though. The news continues right now. Good morning. Thanks for joining us this Tuesday. I'm Savannah Sellers. Joe is off today. Right now on Morning News Now, President Trump abroad this morning, arriving in the Saudi Arabian capital of Riyadh to a royal welcome from Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. It's all part of a multi-nation tour of the Middle East that's also shining a spotlight on the Trump family's real estate deals and that gifted jumbo jet from Qatar. We're covering it all in just a moment. Also this morning, the major markets are taking a minor step back after yesterday's rally on the heels of President Trump pressing pause on most China tariffs. But how might Wall Street react to some new inflation numbers that are out today? Our Economic Dream Team is standing by a little later with your full rundown. Plus, shocking testimony on day one of Sean Diddy Combs' federal sex trafficking trial right here in New York. We heard from the security guard who says he responded to Combs' now infamous hotel altercation with ex-girlfriend Cassie. We'll be looking ahead to day two. And later in the hour, we're setting the stage for another legal showdown gaveling in today, this time in LA, a high-stakes resentencing hearing for the Menendez brothers that could give them a chance at freedom after decades behind bars. We have a lot to get to this morning, and we'll begin in Saudi Arabia, where President Trump is kicking off the first foreign trip of his second term. The president landed in the capital city, Riyadh, just a few hours ago and was given a royal Saudi welcome by Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. This stop marks the first leg of the president's four-day trip to the Middle East. He will then head to Qatar and the United Arab Emirates later in the week. NBC News Chief White House correspondent Peter Alexander is traveling with the president and joins us with the very latest. Peter, good morning.
Good day to you from here in Riyadh, where the heat index is 110 degrees. President Trump's focus here is much on deal-making as diplomacy, his economic ambitions top of mind during the Saudi state visit, a business summit with executives from major U.S. companies. Today's main headline, Elon Musk among those who will be attending, as a proposed gift from Qatar is raising questions about ethics and security. This morning for President Trump, a royal welcome. Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman greeting the president on the first stop in his four-day Middle East tour. Air Force One earlier receiving a Saudi fighter jet escort. The two leaders gathering ahead of an investment conference. All three countries on the president's itinerary, places where the Trump organization, headed up by the president's adult sons, are developing major real estate projects.
Trump Tower, Jeddah. Coming soon.
The visit comes as President Trump is defending his decision to accept this luxury jumbo jet from the Qatari government to be used as the new Air Force One amid years-long delays for a replacement jet from Boeing.
I could be a stupid person and say, oh, no, we don't want a free plane. We give free things out. We'll take one, too.
Inside, lavish leather seats, glimmering floors and ceilings. The president says the jet will be transferred to the Trump Presidential Library Foundation when he leaves office. The White House says legal details are still being worked out on the proposed deal. Qatar says no final deal has been reached. The president has fiercely criticized Qatar in the past.
The nation of Qatar, unfortunately, has historically been a funder of terrorism at a very high level.
The move is raising eyebrows from some national security experts and from some members of the president's own party.
I think it's a mistake, and it's just bringing up something he doesn't need.
Aviation and intelligence experts tell NBC News the Qatari jet would likely have to be dismantled to look for listening devices, then upgraded with costly new systems, all of which could take years.
Well, they better sweep that plane from front to back.
Even some of the president's top MAGA allies are now calling him out on that plane. The jet that the president toured in Palm Beach just a few months ago would need to be refitted with sophisticated systems for mid-air refueling, secure communications, missile defense as well. Tonight, the president will be feted here with a formal dinner. He leaves for his second stop, Qatar, tomorrow morning. Back to you.
Okay, Peter, thank you so much. Well, we've also got big business news this morning. Stock markets around the world roared back on Monday. That's after the United States and China agreed to slash tariffs for 90 days for now, easing up on their trade war. NBC News senior business correspondent Christine Romans is here with more on this and what's happening today in this news. Hi, Christine. Good morning.
Good morning. Yeah, big rally yesterday, big developments in the trade war. The United States and China announcing a 90-day pause on most of their recent tariffs on each other. And that fueled hopes on Wall Street of a cool down in these tensions between the world's two biggest economies. This morning, President Trump touting a dramatic de-escalation of his trade war, calling it a total reset with China after weekend trade negotiations.
They were very happy to be able to do something with us, and the relationship is very, very good.
But overnight, Chinese leader Xi Jinping, in his first remarks since a temporary truce between the two nations, saying there are no winners in tariff wars or trade wars, adding that bullying only leads to self-isolation. The U.S. agreeing to cut its 145% tariff on Chinese goods to 30%, while China will lower a 125% tax on American products to 10%. Overnight, in an executive order, the president also cutting down the tax on small goods, which affected shipments from popular stores like Shein and Temu.
There's a sense that we had shared interest.
The thaw in relations sending stocks soaring. Goldman Sachs also adjusting its 2025 economic outlook, reducing the probability of a recession within the next 12 months to 35%. But even with the lower tariff rates, imports are not expected to bounce back immediately. Port of Los Angeles Executive Director Gene Soroka noting, your refrigerator, outdoor patio set, regular stuff is not just going to come and flood the marketplace because we've gone from 145 to 30%. The conservative Wall Street Journal editorial page this morning calling the agreement a, quote, retreat, and writing after weeks of market turmoil, the economy is left with higher trade costs and greater uncertainty for business. While Trump asked if the tariffs could go back up to 145% if a longer-term deal isn't reached.
No, but they would go up substantially higher.
Now, President Trump is indicating he plans to talk to China's President Xi at the end of this week. And one estimate says that because of this pause, the cost of these tariffs for typical American families will be around $2,800 this year, down from $4,700 had they continued. So
big difference.
A relief, but still a reminder that these are delays and more costs for American families overall because of the trade war.
And a looming question, what happens 90 days from now?
Yes, exactly.
Christine, thank you so much. Well, this morning, the Trump administration is taking new steps to resolve the ongoing troubles at New Jersey's Newark Airport. The Transportation Department is unveiling a plan to fast-track critical fixes to the air traffic control system after telecom and radar outages led to days of flight disruptions. NBC News senior correspondent Tom Costello, who, of course, covers aviation stories for us, he's got the latest.
Hey there, the FAA is already slowing the rate of arrivals and departures at Newark to provide some flexibility. ATC staffing continues to be a problem. Meantime, Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy says an emergency team is rapidly installing new fiber optic lines into Newark, into JFK and LaGuardia, but it will take weeks to test that system, just days before the summer travel season kicks off. This morning, the Transportation Department is dispatching an emergency task force to try to fix the problems plaguing Newark Airport.
My concern is that we could see other situations like this around the country because the system is old. It's old.
2 high-speed redundant telecom lines are now up and running, sending radar and radio data from New York to controllers in Philadelphia at the TRACON, which handles Newark airspace. When the main line glitched early Sunday morning, the new backup lines did in fact hold.
We're using equipment that looks like it's off the Apollo 13 set. And so today we have high-speed fiber, but when it comes into the TRACON, we do slow it down so it can be used by the old equipment.
Sunday's glitch lasted only 30 seconds, but Duffy says controllers feared the system was crashing and ordered a 45-minute ground stop.
And Newark, just so you know, we're all rooting for you for better equipment and more staff.
At Newark on Monday, incoming flights were delayed by more than 100 minutes on average.
I just figured that I'll roll with the punches, and if I'm delayed, I'm delayed.
Amid the equipment failures, too few controllers, and a runway under construction, United Airlines has already cut nearly 3 dozen flights at Newark, as the FAA prepares to discuss more reductions with the airlines tomorrow.
We're very focused on making sure that travel into Newark is safe and efficient.
So United Airlines, which uses Newark as a hub, released a video reiterating it is safe to fly, saying its pilots train for issues and have procedures and policies to manage loss of communications. The airline also saying that there are several layers of safety protocols. Back to you.
Oh, all right, Tom Costello, a lot there. Well, despite the FAA taking a new course of action, those delays are having a nationwide effect. At times, the FAA said flights to Newark were delayed up to 7 hours from airports across the country yesterday. And as Tom Costello just said, United Airlines uses Newark as a hub. And the CEO, Scott Kirby, just joined our friends over at the Today Show to discuss how the airlines are handling the ongoing disruptions. Take a listen.
Well, it is absolutely safe. Look, if you're an air traffic controller, I appreciate the work. They're incredible professionals in everything that they do to keep the sky safe. But it's stressful, it's tense, they're understaffed, they're working a lot to overtime hours. But what we do when there are situations like this, communication, radar outages, anything, we have backup procedures and backups to the backups. And essentially what happens in a situation like that is airplanes go into holding patterns, the same kind of thing that you see for weather, and they fly circles in the sky, and they also have systems on board the airplane where even if the air traffic control radar is down, they can see each other as airplanes in an independent system. And so they maintain separation, they fly circles in the sky, and they get the airplanes on the ground safety. So we always focus on safety first, everyone in aviation. And our pilots, as Captain Morgan said in that video yesterday, are trained extensive. Some of the first things they train are what to do in a situation like this happens.
Safety is paramount.
Yeah.
And you've established, or you've asserted that it is safe. So let's set that aside for a moment. It's not fun. I mean, just yesterday we reported you had more than a 100-minute delay on average in Newark. There are 35 flights canceled out of Newark, United alone. Bottom line it for me, if you were telling a friend, you can fly out of Newark or you can fly out of the other New York airports right now, would you say Newark, honestly?
I honestly would. The facts are the facts. And for the first, there is runway construction right now through June 15th. But when the runway is done, Newark was the most reliable. It was the most on time of the 3 New York airports. All of the New York airports suffer from delays because it's a crowded airspace and it's one of the most popular places in the world to go. And there's a lot of people that live here. So they all 3 suffer from delays. But Newark had become the most reliable of the 3 New York airports.
So after June 19th, when the runway's done, you think it's better, but like right now, you wouldn't go through it?
No, even right now I would. The numbers that you talked about include what we did is we pulled 35 more flights out of the schedule. So they're showing up in your data. But customers weren't getting flights canceled because we did that a week ago. And the FAA tomorrow is having a meeting with other airlines to pull the schedule down. What we're doing is matching the number of flights at the airport to the amount that the FAA tells us they can handle. If we do that, it eliminates the delays for customers.
And our thanks to Savannah and Craig for bringing us that interview. Well, as Peter Alexander mentioned earlier, the Trump administration is preparing to accept that luxury jet from Qatar. But Democrats are sounding the alarm on the safety and legality of accepting a gift with such a high price tag. NBC News White House correspondent Yamiche Alcindor digs in on this burgeoning controversy.
As President Trump begins his 3-day visit to the Middle East, he says he's preparing to accept a super luxury jumbo jet from the royal family of Qatar to use as the new Air Force One.
I think it's a great gesture from Qatar. I appreciate it very much. I would never be one to turn down that kind of an offer. I mean, I could be a stupid person and say, no, we don't want a free, very expensive airplane.
The Boeing 747-8 is estimated to cost some $400 million. The president's plans to accept it sparking widespread criticism. Former intel officials telling NBC News such a gift could pose massive spying risks, citing gifts from foreign governments that have been bugged with listening devices in the past.
I think it's an unbelievably risky scenario to have a president fly in an aircraft that wasn't hand-built by a company in the U.S. overseen by the Secret Service or other government agencies.
At a news conference Monday, President Trump justifying his decision by criticizing Boeing's delays in delivering a new Air Force One.
We're very disappointed that it's taking Boeing so long to build a new Air Force One. You know, we have an Air Force One that's 40 years old.
Boeing did not return NBC's request for comment. The company produced the current Air Force One. It is a highly customized Boeing 747-200B model that can refuel itself mid-air, is protected against electromagnetic pulses, has advanced secure communication equipment, and military defense systems. The plane from Qatar would need to be retrofitted with the same features. But as built, some models come equipped with spacious lounges, a master bedroom, and a private office. Democrats slamming President Trump's willingness to accept a gift of this magnitude and saying it would first need congressional approval, according to the emoluments clause of the Constitution.
He is putting America's national security at risk to enrich himself. You cannot think of another president who has been so brazen, so selfish, and so destructive of the norms of what America's about.
And even longtime Trump ally Laura Loomer blasting the move as a stain on the administration and saying she is disappointed. President Trump saying the new plane would be a gift to the Department of Defense and that he would not use it after his term ends.
It would go directly to the library after I leave office. I wouldn't be using it, no.
The White House press secretary also saying that any gift accepted would be in full compliance with the law. And a White House official telling NBC News that the gift will not be presented nor accepted this week while the president is in Qatar. A Qatari spokesperson also saying the plan is still under review and that no decision has been made.
Well, according to two U.S. officials, President Trump is expected to deliver a speech while in Qatar later this week and talk with American troops at the Al Udeid Air Base there. Let's get you some weather now. Heavy rain is set to soak the mid-Atlantic to the northeast until tomorrow. We've got more details on that with your forecast with Angie Lassman, who's here in studio. Hey, Angie, good morning.
Hi, Savannah. Good morning to you. Hope you brought your umbrella. We've got rain in the forecast for parts of the northeast, specifically the heaviest of it centered across the mid-Atlantic this morning. And we've got some of these lighter showers stretching back into the Great Lakes. Plenty of flood alerts to go around. This number topping out at about 16 million right now. It's a little less than it was earlier this morning, but still much of this going to stay in effect here as we've got more of that rain on the way as the day goes on. And here's why. The system kind of lifts to the north here as we get through your Tuesday. That means the heavy rain focused across the mid-Atlantic, some of those scattered showers farther back to the north and west, and the potential for some flooding, of course, through the day today. Even tomorrow, this kind of just hangs around and we'll still have some of those downpours possible across the mid-Atlantic. Less kind of coverage-wise when it comes to the northeast, but still some scattered showers in the picture for our friends across the northeast for tomorrow. This is the area, though, specifically that we're going to watch for the biggest potential to see some of that flash flooding. So Williamsport down to New Bern, including Richmond, Washington, D.C., Norfolk, all has that slight risk for some flash flooding. But this really expands back to the Ohio Valley, including Philadelphia and stretching down to Atlanta as well. Those are the regions in some of the cities that we're going to see with the greatest potential to see some rainfall. I think rainfall rates will be pretty impressive in some spots, upwards of 2 inches per hour. So no surprise if we get some of that flooding going on. But when it's all said and done through at least tomorrow, picking up maybe 2, 3, upwards of 4 inches in some of these spots. Otherwise, we've got summer-like temperatures that have settled in for the middle of the country and parts of the Great Lakes. It's 70s for Detroit today. Not all that impressive, but look at Minneapolis, 88 degrees. We're running almost 20 degrees above normal for that part of the country. We've got 90s for Lubbock and Dallas. We've got triple digits for San Antonio. And it's not just confined to today. It's a summer-like feel tomorrow, too, with more of those 90s from the central to the southern plains and temperatures as far north as Fargo hitting 91 degrees. So we're going to see really more of that warmth over the next couple of days for folks across the middle of the country. But look ahead to Thursday and Friday. It is pool weather, to say the least. We've got 90s as we round out the weekend in Raleigh. We've got 80s for Friday and Saturday in Philadelphia, 90s on tap on Friday in Atlanta, upper 80s for Memphis on Thursday and Friday. We kind of hang out in that same region and stay into the 80s at least for Indianapolis as we get into Saturday, Savannah. It's going to be a warm one. And of course, we've also got that fire concern that we're still watching across parts of the central or the northern plains and the southwestern part of the United States with these temperatures and some gusty winds fueling that.
Oof. All right. Wow. Well,
Oof
that's
is right. That's to summarize
yeah.
it. Oof. Yeah.
Thanks, Angie.
You got
See you in a bit. After decades behind bars for the murder of their parents, the long-awaited resentencing hearing for Eric and Lyle Menendez finally gets underway this morning in Los Angeles. It means the brothers could soon find out whether they have a chance at freedom. NBC News senior legal correspondent Laura Jarrett has the latest on the case.
Hey there. Well, after months of setbacks and delays, today the Menendez brothers are getting their day in court, guys. A high-stakes moment. This time last year, it wasn't even a conversation. And while the attention around the case has resurfaced in a major way, today is all about convincing an audience of one.
This morning, the start of what could be a watershed moment for Eric and Lyle Menendez. The brothers expected to appear virtually today in a Los Angeles courtroom as a judge considers if they should be eligible for release now after spending more than 30 years behind bars. Multiple witnesses expected to be called to the stand this week, with attorneys for Eric and Lyle hoping to persuade the judge they've been rehabilitated and are not the same young men who killed their parents back in 1989.
I don't know that I've ever seen, or I don't know that anybody has ever seen, the amount of rehabilitation, dare I say redemption.
While the state says they haven't fully owned up to their lies.
They pose an unreasonable risk of danger to the community, and the resentencing should not, therefore, be granted.
The case thrust back into the spotlight last fall with a Netflix series and other documentaries, along with an army of social media defenders.
The resentencing will continue.
All resurfacing their claims the brothers were abused for years by their father. But their legal path toward freedom has been marked by challenges and delays. The current DA, Nathan Hochman, unsuccessful in his attempts to withdraw the prior DA's support of the brothers' bid for resentencing. At the same time, Eric and Lyle have petitioned Governor Gavin Newsom for clemency.
I just want to be influenced by the facts.
The governor commissioning a risk assessment only recently completed and still largely under wraps, but some details now trickling out in court proceedings, including a finding that the brothers pose a, quote, moderate risk to the community if they're released. Still, family members who hope to see Eric and Lyle set free say they remain hopeful the judge will see the brothers the way they do.
It's difficult at times to keep hope up, but I know who they are. I've seen their journeys. They're amazing people. They have turned into men that I would welcome into my home.
As for the choreography of this two-day hearing, we expect the prosecution will go first, followed by the defense. And we know the defense plans to put up several witnesses who plan to talk about the brothers' rehabilitation. Back to you guys.
Okay, Laura, thank you so much. We've got much more to come on this hour of Morning News Now. A little later, we're digging into day 2 of the federal trial of Sean Diddy Combs right here in New York after a stunning day of witness testimony yesterday. But up first, Kim Kardashian taking the stand today in Paris against that group of robbers who stole millions of dollars worth of jewelry nearly 10 years ago. So why go to trial in 2025? We're digging into that next. Welcome back. The Trump administration is getting pushback this morning over a group of white South Africans who were granted refugee status after President Trump gave them an exemption. It comes amid the president's suspension of refugee admissions from almost all other countries. NBC News Chief Washington correspondent Andrea Mitchell has the details.
White South Africans arriving as refugees at Dulles Airport outside Washington, a plane chartered by the State Department. a process that usually takes years, greeted by a top-ranking U.S. diplomat.
Welcome. Welcome to the United States of America.
And this from President Trump.
It's a genocide that's taking place that you people don't want to write about, but it's a terrible thing that's taking place. And farmers are being killed. They happen to be white, but whether they're white or black makes no difference to me.
The president signed an executive order in February calling them victims of unjust racial discrimination from the country's black majority, something the South African government vigorously denies. The administration also canceled temporary refugee status for as many as 14,000 Afghans already in the U.S., including many who served alongside the U.S. in the war. All face persecution from the Taliban if they are forced to go back. Veterans groups reacting. How do American veterans of the war in Afghanistan feel about the way their Afghan interpreters and allies are being treated?
We're pissed off. This is absolutely insane that we would treat people this way.
The welcome for white South Africans also in sharp contrast to another executive order the president signed the day he took office, suspending new refugee admissions for everyone else, including black Sudanese escaping genocide and Latin Americans fleeing violent gangs. Some question whether Elon Musk played a role in winning refugee status for his fellow white South Africans, because he has repeatedly posted on his platform X about their plight.
Andrea, thank you so much. Well, new this morning, French actor Gerard Depardieu was just found guilty of sexual assault. NBC's Matt Bodner joins us with that and other world headlines. Matt, good morning.
Savannah, good morning. Depardieu has been found guilty by a Paris court of sexually assaulting 2 women on a film set in 2021. His punishment? An 18-month suspended prison sentence. The French movie star has been convicted of groping a 54-year-old set dresser and a 34-year-old assistant during the filming of French-language film The Green Shutters. Depardieu has long denied the allegations and did not attend Tuesday's hearing. These are not the first sexual assault allegations made against him. In total, he's been publicly accused by more than 20 women. Only these accusations have made it to court. Depardieu has denied all of the accusations. Moving along now to the United Kingdom, police have arrested a man for suspected arson attacks on 2 properties linked to Prime Minister Keir Starmer. London police say the suspect is 21 years old and he's suspected of having intent to endanger life. The arrest followed a fire at the Prime Minister's private home in North London, and then a small fire outside the front door of rental apartments also in North London linked to the Prime Minister. Counter-terror police are leading the investigation. And we'll wrap up this hour in Japan. They call themselves the Cheery Men, and they're a group of former university cheerleaders who now work various corporate jobs. Unsatisfied with the work-life balance of professional life, these young men have started practicing and performing a new routine in their free time while dressed as blue-suited salarymen, as they're often called in Japan. On the weekends, they perform at shopping malls and other venues simply to entertain people. The message? If Japanese salarymen can do what they're passionate about, then everyone else can keep on chasing their dreams too. I can get behind that. Back to you.
Wow, that is so fascinating to watch. Matt, thank you. Well, in other international news, Kim Kardashian is in a Paris courtroom this morning testifying against a gang of robbers who stole more than $9 million worth of jewelry from her back in 2016. NBC News International correspondent Ralph Sanchez is in Paris covering the trial and joins us with the very latest. Hey, Ralph, good morning.
Savannah, good morning. It has been nearly 9 years since Kim Kardashian became the victim of one of the most brazen diamond heists in modern history. She has described it as the most terrifying moment of her life. And today she is inside of this court confronting the people accused of putting her through it.
This morning, Kim Kardashian arriving at a Paris court to testify against the gang accused of holding her at gunpoint and robbing her of nearly $10 million worth of diamonds and jewelry.
I'm like, what is happening? Are we going to die?
In October 2016, Kardashian was staying in a luxury apartment for Paris Fashion Week when prosecutors say robbers disguised as police broke in.
They brought in the concierge from downstairs, handcuffed, with a gun up to him.
Kardashian reliving the terrifying ordeal on David Letterman's Netflix show.
He grabbed me and pulled me towards him, but I wasn't wearing anything underneath. So I was like, okay, this is like the time I'm gonna get raped.
She says she was blindfolded, bound, and left in a bathroom, while the thieves made off with her jewels, including this $4 million engagement ring from her former husband, Kanye West.
They kept on saying the ring, the ring.
9 years later, Kardashian will come face to face with the 9 men and 1 woman nicknamed the Grandpa Gang, because many of them are in their 60s and 70s, including Yunus Abbas, who wrote a book called I Kidnapped Kim Kardashian. We met his defense attorney.
To be clear, it's been 9 years that he regrets what he did.
Kardashian last week appearing at the Met Gala and posting an anklet from her daughter North for Mother's Day, but telling Today in 2019 she's much more private since the robbery.
You know, before I was going to every hot spot and every place where you could possibly be seen. And so I definitely know the balance of privacy and how to take that for myself, for my own, mental well-being.
And Kardashian's testimony expected to last several hours, including cross-examination. Interestingly, here in France, you don't plead guilty, not guilty, the way you do in the United States. Some of the defendants here have acknowledged they played a role in the heist, but they are denying that they took part in the actual kidnapping, and they're hoping for lighter sentences. Savannah.
All right, Raph Sanchez, thank you very much. Well, coming up, the federal criminal trial of rap mogul Sean Diddy Combs continues this morning. When Morning News Now returns the shocking courtroom testimony from day one and what we're expecting today when the New York judge gavels in. That's next. Stay with us. We are back with some new video reportedly showing the shooting of a DoorDash driver who police say stopped to ask for directions. NBC News correspondent Shaquille Brewster has the latest on that and the elected official that's allegedly involved. And we want to warn you, this report contains disturbing audio and images of gun violence.
Newly obtained surveillance video reportedly showing the moment an elected official in upstate New York shot a DoorDash driver outside his home. The driver, who has not been publicly named, was attempting to deliver food to a house in Chester, New York, police say, when he became lost and unable to navigate using the app. They say he approached several homes asking for directions before arriving at the residence, seen here at a nearby address just before the shooting in a video obtained by News 12.
I have a DoorDash. My phone is broken. Can help?
State police say he then went to the home of New York Highway Superintendent John Riley, who is also a federally licensed firearms dealer. Another video obtained by News 12 reportedly showing the 48-year-old walking out of his house. The video appears to show Riley initially shooting into the side of his yard, yelling at the driver to leave as the DoorDash driver turned on his ignition.
Go! Go!
Moments later, firing toward the vehicle after the driver starts to reverse. Shooting once more as the victim drove off. Police say one of the bullets struck the driver in the back, causing serious physical injuries. Riley out on bail, but facing felony assault and criminal weapon possession charges, according to state police.
Just shock, disbelief, disgust. I just can't believe that took place.
Chestertown supervisor says the town board is holding a special meeting to consider calling for Riley's resignation.
We can't fire him. We can't unappoint him. We can't put him on leave of any type. He's elected.
Riley did not return our request for comment. A DoorDash spokesperson saying, quote, "No one should ever fear for their safety just for trying to make deliveries in their neighborhood. We're devastated by the senseless act of violence and we're wishing the Dasher a full and speedy recovery."
This situation isn't representative of the town of Chester. We are good people. This is a complete outlier in terms of, how we treat anybody from outside the community.
Riley does not yet have a new court date scheduled. Shaquille Brewster, NBC News.
Well, this morning, witness testimony will continue in day 2 of the highly anticipated sex trafficking trial of Sean Diddy Combs. That trial began in Manhattan federal court yesterday, with prosecutors spending most of the day focusing on Combs' behavior toward his ex-girlfriend, Cassie Ventura. The prosecution also alleged that Combs used his fame and his power to run a criminal enterprise, which coerced victims into sex parties known as freak-offs. The defense pushed back, saying that the alleged victims participated willingly in his sex life. Combs faces charges of racketeering, conspiracy, sex trafficking, and transportation to engage in prostitution. He has denied all the allegations against him. NBC News legal analyst Danny Savalas joins us for more. We should warn viewers some of the details we're about to discuss are quite disturbing. Danny, good morning. First, let's start with the jury. We know that that's what the day sort of ended on right before that we got into the actual hearing of these opening statements from both sides. What do we know about the 12 men and women who will now decide the fate of this trial, and what did the defense and prosecution focus on in their opening remarks when addressing them?
Well, you see the numbers right there. You've got a scientist. That's probably the defense sees that as a win because the view is that scientists are more sticklers for elements. They may hold the prosecution more to their burden of proof. But again, all of this is astrology, whether it's women, men, everybody has their own experiences. So a lot of us lawyers work on some really outdated generalizations about people when selecting a jury. But you have a pretty diverse group. And because we're in federal court, we draw from a larger geographic area. So you're going to get people from the Bronx. You're going to get people from Westchester. You're going to get people from all over. Whereas if you were in state court, you just get them from Manhattan, which, by the way, is a pretty diverse community. In terms of opening statements, no surprises. The government had to address the issue of, hey, this is not about us invading his private sex life. This is about federal trafficking and prostitution crimes, and of course, racketeering crimes. Now, the defense, I really expected they would do this, and they did. They kind of had to, because you have the Cassie video. You have a lot of bad stuff about their client, so they have to do the old chestnut where they say, you may conclude that my client is a huge jerk. You may think he committed domestic violence, but that's not what he's on trial for here. Keep an open mind, listen to the evidence, and apply the evidence to the elements and see if the government has met its burden.
Danny, when court opens up again today, cross-examination will continue for a male escort. His name's Daniel Phillip. He described being shocked and terrified when he witnessed Combs assault Cassie Ventura years ago. Tell us, again, some of these disturbing details here that we learned on day one of this trial.
Sure, the escort's going to talk about these disturbing details, but really, this is just window dressing. The assaults on Cassie are not really part of the core elements of these crimes. What this escort can really testify to that will bury Combs, figuratively, of course, is, am I a prostitute? Yes. Was I paid money? Yes. And if possible, can they get him to say that I traveled from or used something in interstate commerce, whether it be a cell phone or something like that? That practically makes out all the elements of at least the Mann Act prosecution, which is transportation for the purpose of prostitution. So as much as the Cassie Ventura allegations and the video and everything looms large over this case, government prosecutors are very good at bringing in this kind of evidence, even though it's not core to the elements they have to prove. The key, at least with the escort, is, am I an escort, and did I have anything to do with crossing state lines?
Ventura herself is expected to be the prosecution's third witness today. She's, of course, at the center of this case. We were just referencing another witness discussing what they witnessed, what they allege they witnessed between the two of them. And also, of course, there's that shocking hotel camera footage that showed Combs hitting and kicking her back in 2016 that was just so difficult to watch. How important is that video for the prosecution? And do we have any idea what we're going to hear from Cassie herself today?
It's important to set the stage showing the video. That's why they opened with it. They want that to sort of permeate the entire trial, even though the assault itself is not exactly what Combs is on trial for. This is not a domestic violence case. It's not really even an assault case. The racketeering charges do require proof of what are called predicate crimes. So you may see evidence of those kinds of crimes, drug trafficking, things like that. But he's not on trial technically for the assault on Cassie in the video. But prosecutors are smart. They know that this kind of evidence will really get the jury thinking that this guy is a bad guy.
Danny Ceballos, thank you very much. Well, coming up, inflation is back in the spotlight this morning. After the break, we're digging into some new numbers out today on the price Americans are paying for essentials like groceries and gas. And you know, that means we have got our economic dream team at the ready to break it all down for you. Our own Brian Chung and Investopedia's Caleb Silver. They are watching your wallet. Wow. Is that a secret handshake? We're back with some breaking economic data. In April, inflation rose by 2.3% year over year and 0.2% month over month. That is less than expected. Here, of course, to dig in on that report is NBC News business and data correspondent Brian Chung, Investopedia's editor-in-chief Caleb Silver. Good morning to both of you. Brian, let's start with you at the big board. Just walk us through these numbers and how they compare with previous months.
Yeah, they were below expectations, which means that inflation wasn't as bad as maybe some would have feared during this month. So in the month of April, we actually saw inflation go down. We didn't incorporate it on this chart, but it actually goes down to 2.3% on a yearly basis. Again, that's how much prices rose in April of this year compared to April of last year. That continues this decline that we've seen since the beginning of this year of the rate of inflation, which was somewhere closer to 3% in January. Now, when we unpack the monthly changes in some of the big categories, when we look at food between March and April, so again, we're talking about monthly changes here, we saw deflation. We saw an actual decline by 0.1% in food prices. Energy prices did go up just slightly, up 0.7%. And shelter costs, this is the biggest one for most Americans. That did accelerate by a little bit from 0.2% to 0.3%, but nothing crazy out of the ordinary there. Again, this was a pretty solid report, but I want to point out, doesn't reflect the main impact of the tariffs because the 145% tariff on China, that didn't come into effect until April 9th, and those so-called reciprocal tariffs didn't come into effect until April 2nd. Usually the survey period for the CPI covers the full month, but again, many economists we were talking to said it could have been months before we felt the impact of those tariffs, which, as we know, in some cases were actually de-escalated.
Yeah, so Caleb, let's bring you in here. First, just your reaction to this report, but also on the tariffs point. What do we see and when, given that there was this slight spike and now we're on this pause and some things have de-escalated since, as Brian just pointed out, we were initially concerned?
Yeah, the smoke was much worse than the fire. I think we were all expecting a jump in inflation. A big part of that was the drop in gasoline prices. This is very significant for households. That's one of the biggest expenses we have on a week-to-week basis. That drop in gasoline and energy prices, a big deal in keeping inflation in check. And it is in the sweet spot right now, between 2 and 2.5%. This is just where the Federal Reserve likes it. This economy right now seems like it's going to be all right when we have that tariff pause right now. We'll see how things play out over the next 90 days with some of those other tariffs coming into play in the next few weeks. But right now, this is kind of a sweet spot for inflation. We thought it would be a lot worse.
Wow. Brian, tell us more by category. You did a little bit of that, but let's get specific.
Yeah, no, real quick, by the way, on energy, gas prices at the pump did go down. What accounted for the rise in overall energy was utility gas pipelines going into homes. So just want to make that distinction there. But yes, when we talk about certain categories, these are the things that I was watching going into this report, because this is where we would have felt that impact of the tariff, specifically on China. Clothing and electronics, where we bring in so much from there. Clothing prices actually went down by 0.2% on a monthly basis. And electronics, we did not really see a substantial inflation there, up just 0.3%. Again, nothing crazy. New vehicles, this was a big one because actually, if anything, we would have seen the bite from those auto tariffs, 25% that was implemented in March. So maybe in April, we would have seen that impact. It instead went flat. So again, we're not really seeing the impact of the tariffs, at least in this report. Maybe we see it in the reports to come. But again, because of the de-escalation that we've seen with a number of countries, maybe we don't see that anymore. Here's some prices that I want to point out that Americans are familiar with. We've been talking so much about rates of change, but here are just the straight prices. If we're talking about April, not May here, but eggs a dozen a year ago were $2.69. Prices were still substantially higher, although they came down from March, about $5.12 per dozen. Milk prices have been going sideways. It's about $4.07 right now. Again, nationally, depends on where you live. And then gasoline prices per gallon, it is down, as Caleb was noting, to $3.33. That is down about half a buck from where we were a year ago, almost $4.
Wow. Caleb, all right, when's the next meeting?
36 days, 5 hours, and 14 minutes. Who's counting? But don't expect much to change at that meeting. There's only about a 5% chance the Fed lowers rates a quarter point. There's been talk of the Fed maybe only doing 2 rate cuts this year, 2 very small rate cuts of a quarter point each. That's not going to make the president very happy. But with inflation right where it wants it, on almost full employment at 4.2%, no reason to cut interest rates right now and stimulate inflation, especially because we might still have tariffs. We have that 30% with China, and they have that delay on the others. But higher prices are coming. No reason to cut rates now if you're the Federal Reserve.
So you guys both seem pleasantly surprised by this number. Caleb, for the consumer, is this going to be a pleasant surprise that they're going to feel anytime soon?
Oh, they're going to feel like things cost what they cost, and they're not expecting a huge price spike right away. We were anticipating one because of the threat of tariffs, but right now you're at a pretty normal rate of inflation at 2.3%. We don't know how long it's going to last, but prices are kind of where they are right now, and this is a very stable place.
All right, Caleb and Brian, thank you both very much covering this breaking news for us this morning. We've got more money news now. McDonald's is ramping up hiring ahead of summer. CNBC's Silvana Henao is with us with that and more. Hey, Silvana, good morning.
Hey, Savannah, good morning to you. Yeah, McDonald's says the fast food giant and its franchisees plan to hire as many as 375,000 employees this summer. Now, McDonald's, well, it needs more workers as it aims to open 900 new U.S. restaurants by 2027. It's also gearing up to serve more customers over the summer months. You know, Apple plans to use an AI tool to help increase the iPhone's battery life. Bloomberg reports the tool will be introduced with the iOS 19 software update later this year. Now, it will analyze user behavior and make adjustments to conserve energy. It's part of Apple Intelligence, which will also include a lock screen indicator showing how long it will take to charge the device. And Wicked is headed to the small screen this fall. NBC plans to air a live musical TV special with co-stars Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande performing songs from the hit movie. Now, the special, announced by Wicked director John Chu during NBC Universal's upfront presentation yesterday, will take place at the Peacock Theater in Los Angeles ahead of the second installment of the film Wicked for Good, which opens on November 21st. And the special will air live on NBC and stream the next day on Peacock, Savannah.
All right, pretty cool. Savannah, Thank you so much. Well, Florida scientists predict this summer will be the state's worst seaweed season on record. In fact, a recent report shows beaches could see 40% more seaweed this year than in 2022. Wow. That's when the last record was set. Reporter Ari Adzer from our South Florida affiliate explains how these findings could impact your summertime beach trip.
I've looked at it now, and it's more than we had it last year at this time, that's for sure. And that's a bad sign.
Depending on what beach, depending on the day, you could find a sargassum mess on the sand and in the water.
It's unsightly, and people don't like it, and it's got to be cleaned up, and it costs a lot of money to clean it up every day.
FIU professor Stephen Leatherman, known as Dr. Beach, says everything from climate change to Saharan dust cloud to deforestation in the Amazon is feeding blooms of sargassum weed in the Atlantic, which then ends up on our beaches.
When you see that kind of seaweed on the beach, what do you think?
I really don't enjoy swimming in it. I often see critters just hanging around in it, and I don't like to be near it.
Today's a good beach day, not much seaweed here at Hallover, but when you see a lot of it, what do you think?
It's the worst, actually. It kind of ruins the beach day because it starts itching when you go in the water. It's not a good experience.
It can do more than make you itchy. Dr. Mary Beth Gidley of UM's Cooperative Institute for Marine and Atmospheric Studies says sargassum is not necessarily a hazard, but people should keep their distance.
Sargassum can carry some bacteria attached to it. And while most of these bacteria can be harmless, there is always the possibility that there might be one of the pathogenic bacteria that they can be exposed to.
So you like it when they clean it up, right?
Yes, 100%. And for the past couple of months, every time I come, I'm praying. I'm please don't let there be seaweed. Please don't let there be seaweed.
Our thanks to Ari Adzer for that report. Florida state officials say they spend millions of dollars cleaning up seaweed every summer. Well, coming up, a legal battle is brewing over a pair of LA's most beloved residents. When we come back, more on the new lawsuit fighting to keep a pair of elephants in the City of Angels with more room to roam. That is next. Stay with us. Welcome back. We're going to end the hour with a legal fight over two longtime residents of the Los Angeles Zoo. A new lawsuit backed by animal advocates and a few famous names is trying to stop the move of elephants Billy and Tina to another zoo in Oklahoma. NBC News correspondent Morgan Chesky joins us from Los Angeles with this one. Hi, Morgan. Good morning.
Hey, Savannah, good morning. In the battle over Billy and Tina, the beloved elephants at the center of this issue is now heating up, and it all comes down to space. The duo was originally slated to go to the Tulsa Zoo, but now a growing number of animal rights activists, including one iconic pop star, are weighing in and trying to get this pair of elephants a little bit more room to roam. These gentle giants are now at the center of a bitter legal battle. Billy and Tina, the last two Asian elephants at the Los Angeles Zoo, were set to pack their trunks and head off to a new location. But that move is now sparking some serious pushback.
Not another zoo! Not another zoo!
Following protests, and criticism online.
They really need to go to an elephant sanctuary instead of another zoo.
A new lawsuit is asking an LA court for a temporary restraining order to stop zoo officials from moving the beloved pair of pachyderms to the Tulsa Zoo, alleging they will suffer in an inhumane environment. The fate of LA's elephants, who have been at the zoo since 1989 and 2010, drawing some serious star power too. The one and only Cher, advocating for the animals to go to a sanctuary. Writing to the court in part, Billy and Tina have served their time in confinement. They deserve the chance to live out their lives in peace and dignity. The LA Zoo defending the planned transfer, sharing not only will both animals have more space, but saying it will give them the opportunity to live among other elephants.
They're really beloved animals, and the residents of Los Angeles have a lot of, pride and concern for their well-being.
Melissa Lerner represents the animal lover who filed the suit.
I think that this is really not a zoo against zoo comparison. This is about the well-settled science that no zoo, however large the enclosure is, can really offer a humane environment for elephants to live in.
The Tulsa Zoo has expanded its elephant habitat, which is already home to 5 elephants and includes a 10-plus acre wooded area. The LA Zoo says the move to Tulsa will allow Billy and Tina to continue receiving exceptional care, with opportunities to integrate with a larger herd. So as for what comes next, that is a bit of a question right now. The LA Zoo has not said if there's an official date for when this pair could be going to Tulsa. But we do know, Savannah, that this Wednesday there is a court hearing that would discuss that temporary restraining order that would keep Billy and Tina here at least for now. In the meantime, we have reached out to the Tulsa Zoo, but have yet to hear back. Savannah.
All right, Morgan Chesky, thank you so much. Well, that is going to do it for this hour of Morning News Now, but don't go anywhere. The news continues right now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.